I love it because of the way it is made. And it puts the designer, it doesn't mean it's just the clothing designer. You know, it could be a product designer, it could be a technical designer, puts the designer in the center of the stage. So watch it carefully, because I think the ideas that come from it is much more interesting, and the program is not what I'm promoting. Job is to bring something to the table that will open your eyes as creative people. So what I'm going to talk about is disruptive thinking in fashion. But to understand what disruptive thinking means, I'm going to reference some very old artwork. So if you look at these two works of art, this one is by a Dutch artist, incredible artist called M.C. Escher, who worked a lot with geometry, mathematics, architecture, and he started building this sort of structure where he works with a pattern below here, okay? And then when you allow your eye to travel upward from this sort of pyramid-like pattern, this mosaic over here, as it goes up, it travels and then it becomes a flock of birds. So the assumption is that your perception, the way you see, is when your eye travels upward, you start breaking down, you start disrupting, you start destructing this in order to reach the new idea. Now, this shouldn't be something new to us from the Indian subcontinent, because Shiva, you know, our spiritual heritage tells us that he is the energy of creation and destruction. And that is symbolic of this incredible universal idea that in order to have a new generative idea, something has to be destroyed. So disruptive thinking has become a way of dealing with your life, the way you deal with your profession. Where can you make that little bit of disruption in order for a new idea to germinate? So these are two references, because visually I think it's easy to explain what disruption means, because just esoterically you may not understand. So creative destruction, it comes typically from the mythology of Shiva. You have to be creatively destructive in order to produce new things. Now you must be asking, I mean, you would be thinking, why on earth would I be talking about all this when we are in a design forum? Where do small businesses, small brands that are branching out, the ones that we've been seeing on the ramps, how does it apply to them, to us? So there's a story. The story is there's a gentleman called Jonas Straw. He was sitting with his friends in a cafe discussing what is this disruptive thinking that everyone is talking about, you know? And as they sat around, one of his friends said, you know, can you imagine a world where our socks didn't match? Like, imagine if your socks didn't match. Why should it match? So do you think that's disruptive? So Jonas Straw really thought about it and said, you know, I think there's an idea in there. So he started a company where he created a company called Little Mismatched, where he got 19 million in funding for the sheer power of his idea, where he created a sock company, which is not just 2 socks, 3, and none of them match. And a simple idea like that could become a huge business. In fact, his business is supported by the same funders that support Build-A-Bear. Okay, so you can imagine the gravitas of the money that came into this brand. So if you look around, look at the way we live our lives. You know, there's the taxi service, but today we have Uber. There's bread and breakfast that you could have booked, but now you have Airbnb. Every stage of our lives have been changed by disruptive thinking. And of course, technology plays a huge part. In case I don't miss out all my points, I'm going to go through this. Okay, so we'll go to the next slide. With disruptive thinking, very side by side is, of course, the idea of innovation. You cannot be disruptive in your idea. So let's say, when you look at your own business, when you look at your own lives, and you say, how can I be disruptive? All you have to look for is that cliche in your life, cliche in a brand. Today with social media, you can go and look up what people are saying online, and you can pull out what are the stereotypes, what are the cliches that are associated with your brand. And then you twist that cliche and make it into an opportunity. That's disruptive. When you twist that, then you will be propelled towards innovation, okay? So being innovative, of course, is one of the things that makes us evolve, whether as people or as businesses. And so my question is, how innovative are we as Indian designers, as the Indian creative fraternity? And who is India's Billie Whitehouse? Now, to tell you who Billie Whitehouse, she's a young lady from Australia. She studied design. She's a designer like a lot of you here. And she decided that she is going to find a place where she could bring technology and her design sensibility and fulfill a certain need that people may not have even recognized in their community, okay? So what she did was she opened a company called Wearable Experiments, and she's created some phenomenal stuff out of simple things like underwear, a jacket, which I'll all come to. But this is one of the projects that became super successful because of the need that she filled in our daily lives. Please look at it for the purpose of why this is being shown, because I think you'll have fun watching it.
Oh, baby girl.
Hey, baby.
What's happening?
Oh, I missed you.
I miss you too.
I want to touch you.
I want to touch you too. I really want to touch you, hey.
Do it.
Do it?
Do it.
You're not going to know where it comes from.
Oh, no.
Driving you mad and you should've known. Wrap it up, baby, I'm taking you home. Get off your throne, I want you alone. Take
Not yet. Okay, so of course what she created was she took underwear and she had the technology and she took the sense of touch through the internet across continents. She's a design student. I mean, she was a design student. Now with wearable technology, she's innovating. We are the land of technology. I want to know, where are we collaborating to create products that actually serve a need? Now, she not only did this particular Fundaware initiative, which is super successful, the next one she did was, she was in New York. She's walking around with the Google Maps, looking down the whole time, and she's like, there I am in this beautiful city. I don't even look up. I'm constantly looking down to see where I'm going. So she said, I'm just going to make a jacket. That is a GPS jacket. So she's made this super cool jacket, okay? So it's a GPS jacket. You wear it. It's called New York Navigate. You wear it. If you have to take a left, you get a tap on your shoulder on the left. You want to take a right, you get a tap on. If you have to stop, it's a double tap. So such a simple need that was fulfilled with the help of amazing technology that is at our fingertips today. So I find her very fascinating because she comes from the same world that we inhabit. We're all educated. We've all got the kind of opportunities that, we should be so grateful for. So I want to know who is going to be or who are our Indian Billy White houses, okay? So the next thought process that I want to take you through is, so you have sort of, disruptive thinking, then you have ways to innovate, but the innovation can only happen if you believe in coalition. You have to believe that, we live in a mashup world. Mashup as a term was created by musicians, They took two different types of music from two different areas, mashed it up and created something new. Filmmakers have done it. Artists have done it. William Burroughs used to do this. But in our own lives, in design, and within our own country, how much of this mashup are we doing? Are we really putting our heads together and saying, as a textile designer, I want to work with a scientist. As a graphic designer, I want to work with a musician. I think when there is a coalition of great thinking minds, new ideas germinate. Innovation becomes actually quite, becomes the reason that propels you to keep doing more. This sort of coalition, as I speak, there are kids out there in the design world now who are collaborating with scientists, and they've created fibers that they're making clothes out of, which is from leftover coffee beans, from milk that is not going to be used. So they're bringing back into the cycle what can be reused, but that sort of experimentation only happens when you believe in this creative mashup where you can be like this open door and you want to take all kinds of influences from everywhere. The next slide I want to show you, this just goes to show, so this is this young designer, her name is Naomi Kisner. She's from Jerusalem, and she's an industrial designer. And she said to herself, fossil fuels are going to be over very soon. Our environment is not going to be able to provide it all the time. So how are we going to generate energy? So as an industrial designer, what she's done is create a jewelry that can be embedded in your skin so it traps the kinetic energy from your own body. Now, is this something that is happening now? That's not the point. She's already laying out a template for the future. So what I find interesting, especially about this story, is that so many ways she's looked at her creativity. She's worried about the environment. She, as a woman, perhaps loves her jewelry. She's the industrial designer, and she's able to bring all these expertise together to bring a product to the world that would mean something and has impact. Okay? So, the next slide. So why is it so important? So those are all my fancy slides. I put the pictures together. Because why is it so important? Because the world has changed, okay? The world has changed because now it's circular and it's shared. It's funny that all these big terms like circular economy, shared economy are words that are used by biggest corporate heads of Accenture to Google to Amazon, you name it. but they talk about a shared economy. There's some sort of like, when you say shared economy, it's a sort of a realization that the world has changed, that it's good to be kinder, it's good to think about the environment. You know, the shared economy implies that it's also circular. I was listening to a talk by the managing director of Accenture, which is a huge technology company, and he gave a speech, a talk during the Copenhagen Fashion Summit, which is the biggest sustainable fashion summit in the world. And he talks about the circular economy being, the earlier one was linear, which means it's like a straight line. You get the raw material, you make your product. After the product's use is done, it goes into a landfill. So it is, you create and it's dumped. The problem is becoming so big that, you know, I have some statistics from UK, I don't have from India, but 10,000 units of garments get dumped into a landfill every 5 minutes in the UK. But if you start thinking about the circular economy, then what happens is, instead of dumping, you are reusing. So we have to start thinking in the way where whatever we produce and whatever you do has to recycle into the system. So that's the reason why words like this, you know, they're the very heavy words that very, very important people in the world of business, technology, production, they're using, that the world is circular, the world is shared, which means it is amazing if you can think about, you know, slow fashion, sustainable fashion. You can talk about waste management as part of your design protocol. We can't leave things in isolation. Circular means it goes around. Shared means we have to address all these problems and make it part of the design DNA. The next slide. So that's my daughter. Disruption Innovation Coalition. Why should it matter to our world? Our Indian world. And, you know, my next slide is, oh, sorry, it's right here. Yeah, because I think in India we live in very bipolar times, right? As you know, you and me, we are constantly negotiating. Am I vernacular or am I English? Am I urban or am I rural? You know, am I regional? Am I high-rise and low-rise? We are constantly juggling. I think the biggest thing is this dichotomy that we have in our fashion world, in our everyday world. It's very chaotic, and I find it bipolar. And in the fashion world, too, you have this, the urban fashion world, you know, which is beautiful and it's fancy. And we know that, for instance, urban wedding bridal fashion industry goes into billions, you know, 32 billion US dollars per annum. And on the other hand, you have the artisanal fashion of the rest of India that employs about 40 million artisans all over India. And suddenly you see how dysfunctional that whole system is, that there seems to be no balance in the way we as a nation seem to sort of communicate. So the reason why disruptive thinking in this country would matter a lot, because you've got to bring it to this map. And if you look all around, they're all the handloom clusters of this country. You know, I don't think it's as simple as saying, one season I'm going to do a collection with ikat, or I'm going to do one season with tie-dye. That's beautiful. Of course, you must continue. But disruptive thinking means that you've got to find ideas, collaborate with a variety of people to be able to make an impact that impacts this world of handlooms. You know, I find it particularly surprising because you know, they're soft powers of nations. The soft power of, you know, Scandinavian countries would be their design, for instance. In India, the soft power for us is information technology. We are the IT geekdom of the world. And the other soft power that we have is, of course, our textile heritage. How is it that we haven't been able to bring technology and textile together? And therefore, I address it to our designers who are all, you know, rising stars. You have to be the person, you have to be the designer that is able to bring these two worlds together. because you are the helm of creative activity, and you have a role to play in the way you can bring this sort of disruptive technology, destructive ideas into a very, sort of traditional environment and see where you can make an impact. What can you do with the fabrics? Where can you recycle? What can you do with waste management? Whatever. I'm not here to give you solutions. I'm just saying we've got to start thinking differently, because the way we've been thinking about design, it's too flat and too linear, and we're not making enough of an impact. The next slide. So the idea of, if you can start thinking, can you imagine if you have a small brand? A small brand means you're able to control it. It's young. So you can actually start injecting new ideas, those ideas that keep growing with your brand. One of the biggest problems all the top brands in the world have, the ones that span across many countries and employ millions of people and what have you, is that even if they want to be, let's say, eco-friendly, the system has become so huge, you can't crack it. But here you're just starting out. If you don't build that little seed of CSR activity, which is, corporate social responsibility, if you don't build that seed into your DNA now, when it's too big, you won't be able to do anything. Right now, you can grow with you. So the disruptive practices, the way you start thinking about your businesses, is going to allow you to, creating India's own language of sustainability and innovation. I'll give you an example here about small little examples which impact our lives. I have a daughter who studies wearable technology as a subject. Right now she's 12 years old, and they had a project. You have to make something that is about wearable technology. So, kids think very, very clear about solving problems. They said, okay, what's the problem that we face every day in school? They get scolded by the teachers at the PE class because they have left their scrunchies behind. You can't tie your hair. So they embedded little bits and bobs into it or whatever, and she and her partner created scrunchies. The moment you put it down on the table, it starts blinking. Then you put it back. So simple solutions. And imagine if someone actually took this up as a business opportunity, and every scrunchie that you were going to be used was with recycled fabric or some beautiful fabric from all over the regions in India. I think there is a way of thinking small and making very exciting things come alive. Of course, bridging grassroots and glamour. Disruptive thinking is the only way we can bring two very disparate worlds together. I mean, a fashion week like this that is so successful and wonderful, that generates about 50, 60 crores of editorial coverage, things that we write, we photograph, we talk about, it's so popular online. The strength of an event like this, how can we harness it to use it as a platform also of social change? That it's fun, that we're designing, that we love wearing clothes, that we love watching shows, that's one thing. But if so much of editorial content, so much noise, and everyone's fascinated with the strength of the event, somewhere perhaps we should start thinking about where can we put in an agenda of social responsibility. Of course, I just talked about CSR building into your brand when it's small so you can grow with it. And of course, collaborating with like-minded people, but also the ones who don't necessarily have to belong to your genre of creativity. So I think I talked a lot. So this is my last slide. And I want to be able to tell you something that is very, very close to my heart, which is, I think, designers can't look at their work as just design anymore. It doesn't work when the world is changing so rapidly. Design for design's sake shouldn't exist right now in our country and our needs. Every time you design, think of what can you do to make an impact. It's a very Gandhian way of looking at things, by the way, because he always said, whatever you do, think of the most disenfranchised person who can benefit from it. So I don't mean to pontificate, but I think it should, it's a great feeling when you think that you have a certain responsibility because the country is so huge and needs so much of your attention. So everything that you design, the opportunity out there to reach out to a universe, is much more than just addressing us few who will come anyway. You're talking to the converted. So that's my request. So disruptive thinking, if you just tweak the way you're thinking right now and expand your horizons a little bit, I think we're going to see much more creativity that has also a great social conscience. So as designers, if you can make me, the consumer, from fashion conscious to having a fashion conscience, I think that is disruptive. Thank you.
If anyone,
If there are any questions, I'm here. If you don't, then I'm going to the lounge.
Do you consider yourself an environmentalist? Because that's the vibe I got from your talk, is very sustainable environmental thinking.
Oh, absolutely. I do consider myself an environmentalist. I do consider myself a feminist. I do consider myself as a responsible, I want to be a responsible citizen. And I think it's just making life-friendly choices. We can give all kinds of big names and be labeled as this and that, but we have to make choices that's life-friendly, that's happy-friendly.
I just wanted to say it was a great talk and very different from what I've been hearing.
Thank you.
Hi Bandana, this is Deepthi. Glad to hear whatever you said. ISPO Munich this year pretty much said the same things that you said about sustainability. They were conscious about the fact that they grill it into the heads of all the manufacturers, because what happens is, I'm sure you're aware of this more than anybody, the fabric composition of any garment or anything that's constructed has that component of either poly, that's plastic, etc. So they're trying to figure out how to get rid of that, but at the same time, for the product to be useful.
Yeah.
That's one. Another reason that I really liked and I thought I'll share here is the fact that if you buy one jacket once or one garment once, if it has all the features that you need, it lasts longer. So
Right.
the fact that you said about it going into the wasteland, that goes on, the process is much more
Right. So
short.
if I can interject, you're absolutely right. And, it's not like I'm saying anything that it's been said over and over again. When I said, if you can allow disruptive thinking to come into, let's say, into sustainability that works for us, for India, we have to create our own language of sustainability, because what's sustainable to a very affluent country that has just 20 million people is perhaps not going to work for us. I'll give you an example, okay? Let's take our favorite high street brand, Zara. If Zara said, we are going to make our t-shirts out of organic cotton, which means organic in the true form means you take the seed that has no pesticides, no fertilizers, nothing, and it's grown very organically, and it's grown, but all the yarn is sent to a factory in China where one machine is going to make the 5 million t-shirts, right? In India, we may not use pure organic seed, okay? But we will create natural fibers. But the natural fibers are then worked by hand to make beautiful handmade fabric, which means the capacity for us to employ 8,000 people versus growing something organically and sending it to China, where one machine does the job. So what works for this country? Right? We need to employ more people. We need to make sure there's more bread on the table. So we have to develop our own language of sustainability.
So my question to you then would be, how do you convince manufacturers who cater to big brands when they say that if you give me an order of 1,000 products, then only would I, cater to these norms that you. How do you convince them not to?
If I was that technically bright, I would have the answers. I would. But this talk is, I'm glad we're talking about this, but I would be stepping out of line if I tried to give you a very exact answer. But there are designers around, they face these problems, and you should make sure that you ask them to. Okay?
Do we have any more questions?
I think we're done.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for
I
making
have
the
a
time.
question.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking about, the transformation from being fashion conscious to fashion conscious, and I think that requires a very deep level transformation of attitude, So where you're thinking is what the world can give me, and then you're thinking that what I can give to the world. And all of our young designers are extremely ambitious, and they have to be materialistic to grow.
I think being ambitious is not what I'm questioning. Being materialistic is also not what I'm questioning. I'm just saying, as the brands are growing, how can we live in this world today? Like, it's impossible. Today we're talking about sustainability as if it's like some fancy word. Trust me, 10 years from now, everyone's going to be wearing sustainable fabrics because that's the way the world is moving. Okay? So it's a way of thinking where none of us want to ever say that we are not responsible human beings, that we don't care about an environment. So you're just about putting that into your design DNA, into your business DNA. So it's a way of thinking which grows with you. It's like teaching your child good manners. You don't wait till, the child is 34 years old and you start, bombarding them. No, you teach them good manners as they grow up so they become better people. That's how you've got to nurture your own companies. And with that, it is over.
Bandana, just stay on stage. 2 minutes more. Yeah. I think it was an absolutely brilliant conversation to have. At the lab, we love conversations such as these, which don't give you answers to everything or the solutions to everything. But what's important is to start the conversation, is to ignite that conversation and see where that conversation can go. And there's obviously going to be an ongoing debate about it. But that's what we love. And that's exactly what this talk was. And we loved it. And thank you so much. May I please call Gautam? Yeah.
I'm getting a gift.
May I please invite the head of fashion at IMG Reliance, Saket, to hand over a small token of appreciation to Bandana.
Thank you. Thank you, Saket.
A big, big thank you to Bandana and to each one of you to have, shared your precious time with us, to turn up in such large numbers. That's wonderful. And a big, big thank you to Bandana for sharing such an insightful talk with us. Thank you.
Thanks.
A very big thank you to Bandana, Saket, Gautam, the entire LFW team and the IMG Reliance team. Thank you. It was an absolutely lovely Fashion Funda and we loved being here. Thank you each one of y'all, and this talk will be up on our YouTube channel and y'all can catch it there. Thank you very, very much.